you're aware of who Aceu is, which I'm sure many of you guys are, Aceu was always seen as the biggest streamer in the community that was too big to fail. He was the first person in the Apex community to hit 1 million subs. Over on YouTube and over on Twitch, the guy was dominating the scene like no other. But over time, as he switched his streaming strategy and hopped from Apex Legends to Valorant, and from Valorant to League of Legends, and then back to Valorant, his viewership on both Twitch and YouTube had dropped to a level far lower than where it was during his glory days. And don't get me wrong, I am in no way saying that Aceu fell off, since his community of dedicated fans have been keeping his career stable till this very day. But if you take a quick glance at his analytics today, you would notice that Aceu's viewership is at the lowest level it has ever been at, even lower than 4 months ago when I made my first video on his declining viewership. And while I believe I explained why his decline is happening perfectly in that video from 4 months ago, one thing I should have gone deeper into was why his viewership is so low right now. And in this video, I want to explain just that, so like and subscribe if you enjoy video essays about streamers. I plan on making videos about streamers on all games, not just Apex, so go ahead and hit that sub button. And to get into this video, to understand why Aceu's career is where it's at today, you would first need to understand why he quit Apex Legends in the first place. Now, I'm not going to sit here and give you guys the full rundown of Aceu's story because I already did that in my past video, so go ahead and watch that after this video. Now, the reason why Aceu quit Apex Legends was simply because of the fact that the game was getting boring for him. You see, when he got into Apex Legends, the game had first come out, so the competitive scene didn't develop just yet, and at this time, Aceu was competing for NRG Esports back when most of the tournaments were kill grind tournaments. But not only that, Aceu was there to witness the competitive scene of Apex transition into what it currently is today, and he did not enjoy what competitive Apex was becoming.
And at the beginning, it was just kill races, right? It wasn't like actual competitive, and I've never played a battle royale competitively, so I didn't know what I was getting myself into, right? Then competitive started forming, and I started seeing what a competitive battle royale is, and that completely pushed me away. It definitely made me dislike the game and what I was doing at the time in it.
Luckily for him, he was able to transition towards being a streamer for NRG, since his contract with that organization was far from ending, and his transition towards being a streamer slash content creator proved to be the best decision he could have ever made at this point in his career, because now he was able to focus on showcasing his personality and growing a bond with his viewers, since he didn't have to be serious all of the time while playing Apex. But on top of all of that, as I'm sure everyone already knows, he was the best player on Apex around this time, with little to no competition in terms of recognition whatsoever. But regardless of that, this didn't last long, because in mid-2020, Aceu started to make it clear that he had a declining passion for Apex, since he felt that the game was extremely repetitive, boring, and that it was filled with all kinds of problems. So when Valorant came out, he did not hesitate to make a full switch to that game. And when he switched to Valorant, he noticed that his viewership wasn't directly tied to Apex Legends. Now that he had a solid fan base, his viewership dropped a little, but not drastically like what would have happened to most streamers that made a name for themselves on Apex had they switched games that early on in their careers. So this meant that Aceu now had the power to play any game that brought him joy, rather than toughening up and slaving away on a game which he hated. And I guess a better way to put it would be that at this point, Aceu had two paths to choose from. Path number one, doing what was expected of him, playing Apex Legends, and path number two, prioritizing his mental health slash desire to play whatever game he wanted, which pretty much meant not playing Apex. And while it wasn't clear what path Aceu would choose just yet, keep those two lanes in the back of your head throughout this entire video, because those two lanes would play a crucial role in understanding why Aceu is at where he is at today. But if we go back to where we left off, Aceu would play Valorant from April of 2020 all the way to April of 2021, while taking little breaks throughout that time gap, like in November of 2020 when he returned to play Season 7 of Apex, but he would end up going back to Valorant the month after that. But as you can see, in May of 2021 all the way to June of 2022, Aceu had mainly been playing Apex Legends, and this was because of the fact that he desperately needed to take a break from Valorant. And since Aceu was okay with hopping from game to game whenever he saw fit at this point in his career, when he switched back to Apex, this era would end up becoming Aceu's glory period in terms of viewership over on Twitch and YouTube. But in the background, while this era of his career was beneficial for him in terms of success, which meant that he was now following path number 2. In reality, he still really despised the game and the community, and to him, this was not the path he wanted to take. And from this point forward, he would lock in on path number 1, prioritizing his mental health and desires to play whatever game he wanted to play. And as good as that sounds, when we account for how fucked up and boring the gaming world is these days, there really aren't any new games to play which would ensure your success on Twitch, but on top of that, make you excited to stream those games in the first place. And unfortunately, because he decided to move away from games that ensured his success and started to play games that he wanted to play, but at a time when there wasn't any fun games to play, this was the beginning of Aceu's downfall. At first, while there was a clear downtrend in his analytics, it wasn't that bad, because in July of 2022, all the way to December of the same year, he had been playing Valorant while also playing Apex. So that meant that he was satisfying both of his communities at the same time. But what really had been going on throughout this era of his career was that Valorant had sort of been becoming what Apex Legends was when he first quit that game back in 2020. You see, Aceu quit Apex Legends because it was boring and repetitive, and at the time, Valorant was that new, exciting game that was refreshing to Aceu since he had a past on CSGO. But when Valorant aged and its hype and freshness wore off, Valorant was put into that same category as Apex of games that Aceu's fanbase wanted to watch and play, but Aceu didn't enjoy playing at all. And like I stated earlier, he had been prioritizing his desires to play whatever brought him joy while avoiding things that brought him stress. And this is when he started playing League of Legends. And as you can see, month after month his viewership had been declining lower and lower, to the point where everyone started noticing that he was beginning to fall off. And it was only in the months where he would go back to Apex or Valorant where his declining average viewership and loss of followers would reverse back into the positive, like throughout July of 2023 all the way to December of 2023. But eventually, Aceu would ultimately decide to drop Apex once again, which would unfortunately bring him to the lowest point of his career since 2019. And when Aceu realized that he was losing his stability since many of his fans had stopped watching him due to the games he now streamed, he would end up deciding to take streaming seriously for the first time in however long. In the month of July, he would start an unranked Radiant grind over on Valorant, and at first, this was exciting for his viewers to watch. Aceu was always seen as an extremely skilled player, so people were quick to assume that he would hit Radiant extremely fast, but in reality, it would take him from July of 2024 all the way to the 9th of October to beat that challenge. And throughout all of that, he didn't promote the fact that he was doing this challenge at all. He never tweeted the start of his challenge and didn't tweet or celebrate when he beat the challenge. He just randomly started the challenge and ended up beating it and moved on without informing anyone but the fans that were watching him. And unfortunately, this lack of care for his content and publicity is ultimately what resulted in his viewership to hit an all-time low since 2019, lower than what it was at when I made my first video on Aceu 4 months ago. And for what it seems, if Aceu doesn't start taking his career seriously, it's very much possible that he could decline even lower than where he is right now if he doesn't switch his game plan for a better one.